I know you've had some wins recently regarding to Dias. Can we go through each of those wins and kind of expand, starting with the B1 Protection Act?
Well, sure. Just last week, the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act. And I've spent 13 years fighting for the servicemen and women all across the country, but obviously particularly in Texas, and fighting in particular for our incredibly important military bases all across Texas. Texas has a unique role when it comes to the military in terms of supporting our active duty military, supporting our veterans. There's no state in the union like Texas when it comes to supporting the military. Dias is a crown jewel for our Air Force, and Dias right now has the B-1 bomber. As you know, the Air Force is in the process of transitioning from the B-1 bomber to the B-21 bomber, and then that will be an important transition. Dias will be central to that transition, but it's critical as we do that transition that the B-1 be maintained until the B-21 is ready to go, and so as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, I authored a provision that was adopted last week by the Senate to protect the B-1 at Dias at least until 2030 to ensure that we maintain that capability. We maintain the capability of flying those bombers, the capability of maintaining those bombers. All of the related expertise needs to be maintained so that we can be in a position at Dias to continue with the B-21 going forward. And that is critically important, not just to military readiness. You know, you may know in February of this year, the B-1 bombers from Dias were used to carry out military strikes against Iran's Quds forces in Iraq and in Syria. It's a critically important tool of defending this nation. And when it comes to both the capability and the jobs that Dias drives, it is my job to fight tooth and nail to defend them. And it's my job to have Dias's back. And I'm proud with this victory. It's a big victory for West Texas.
That's awesome. And so the B-21, do you know about when Dias would be expecting to get that? Where are we at on that?
So that timing is still moving forward. It is not set in stone, but part of this National Defense Authorization Act also includes authorization of funding to upgrade the facilities at Dias so that it is prepared to accept the B-21 and be one of the critical bases. So that timing is moving forward. I am pressing for sooner rather than later, but that process is still ongoing within the Department of War.
And so the B1 Low Observational Corrosion Facility and Mission Planning Facility. That's a lot of big words, a long title. Can you kind of explain what that is?
That is additional investment in the capability at Dias, both with the current B1, which is there and will be protected there through 2030, but also it is also helpful in the process of preparing Dias to be able to be one of the core bases, central bases for the B-21.
And then the other win that I was told about was the Dias gate repairs. Can you kind of expand a little bit on what this is?
Um, that's another provision of the National Defense Authorization Act, which is investment to repair the gates and enhance the security. You know, we've seen at a number of our military bases, we've seen a problem with gate crashers. We've seen a problem with potential terrorists coming to the gates, and this is authorization for funding to enhance the security at Dias and to repair and improve the gates.
And so all of these put together, how are these wins going to keep Abilenians safe?
Well, they do two things. Number one, they preserve jobs in Abilene, and that is critically important. Look, there's a reason that every single day we have more than 1,500 people coming to the state of Texas. People are coming to Texas from all over the country, from all the other states. Why? Because Texas is where the jobs are. And my number one priority is jobs, jobs, jobs. So one of the big reasons I fight for Dias is a huge driver of jobs in West Texas. But number two, Dias is also critical for military readiness. We live in a dangerous world. We have serious foes, and I believe in peace through strength. And I got to say, we just saw an incredible illustration of peace through strength this week with an historic Middle East peace deal that President Trump negotiated. And the war in Gaza had continued for 2 years, since October 7th, 2 years ago. And I think one of the reasons it continued so long is the previous administration, the Biden administration, was weak and ineffective. And if you look at this peace deal, a major reason we saw this historic peace deal is our enemies are afraid of President Trump. And I got to say, the world is safer when our enemies are afraid of the U.S. commander in chief. Peace through strength works and it avoids war. The best way to avoid military conflict is to be so strong that our enemies don't want to mess with us. And I think we're seeing that victory. When it comes to Dias is critical to be able to project force anywhere in the world. And when it comes to terrorists, when it comes to our enemies, whether you're talking about Hamas, whether you're talking about Hezbollah, whether you're talking about Iran, whether you're talking about Venezuela, or whether you're talking about major global rivals like China and Russia, the ability to project force globally is critical, and Dias is central to projecting force and to protecting not just Texans, but all Americans.
So speaking of protecting and everything, is Dias going to hold nuclear weapons?
That's going to be one I have to get back to you on. I'd rather not discuss that publicly right now.
That's all right. I figured I just had to ask. Well, kind of transitioning into the government shutdown.
Yeah.
I mean, non-essential operations, they're on hold right now. How is that going to impact Abilene and the people in this area?
Yeah, this government shutdown needs to end. We have voted now 9 times. Republicans have voted to reopen the government. I voted yesterday to reopen the government. We're going to vote later today. I'm going to vote again to reopen the government. We're facing a partial government shutdown. Why? Because the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, this is the Schumer shutdown. The Democrats have forced a shutdown. Virtually every Democrat has voted 9 times so far. They'll vote a 10th time today to keep the government shut down. Why are they shutting the government down? It's really 2 reasons. Number one, they're forcing a government shutdown because they want free taxpayer-provided health care for illegal aliens in America. Now, I got to say, I think that's wrong. I think that's not supported by Texans. It's not supported by Americans. It is driven by a left-wing political agenda, a radical political agenda, and it is incredibly cynical to shut the government down to try to force free health care for illegals. But I'll tell you, Brenna, the shutdown is about something even simpler than that, which is Chuck Schumer has a political problem. Several months ago, when Congress voted to keep the government open several months ago, Schumer and the Democrats cooperated with Republicans in terms of keeping the government open. And Schumer almost lost his job. The radical left-wing base got furious with him. And Chuck Schumer right now is looking over his left shoulder, and he's afraid of being primaried from the left by AOC. And so this shutdown is all about Schumer throwing a temper tantrum and demonstrating to the radical base, you see, I hate Donald Trump as much as you do. I'm so crazy, I'll shut the government down. Please don't take my job away. That's what Schumer is saying. And I'll tell you something that's going to infuriate you. So today, government employees all over the country on October 15th did not get their paycheck. They did not get their paycheck because the Democrats cynically have shut the government down. I think this shutdown is likely to continue at least another week. And the reason why is this Saturday, October 18th, there's a big rally planned of left-wing radicals. It's called the No Kings protest in Washington, D.C. And all these left-wing radicals are coming to Washington, and the Democrats are terrified to reopen the government before the radicals come to town because they're afraid the radicals will be angry with them and tar and feather them if they reopen the government. So what that means, if you're a government employee right now and you didn't get your paycheck, the reason you didn't get your paycheck is because the Democrats are engaged in a political stunt to impress their radicals. I'll tell you a second thing, Brenna, that will infuriate you. Government employees all across America did not get a paycheck today, but you know who did? Members of Congress. Under the 28th Amendment of the Constitution, compensation for members of Congress cannot be altered during their term in office. What that means is even during a shutdown, members of Congress continue to get paid. Now, you don't have to. When this shutdown started, I sent a letter to the Secretary of the Senate saying, please hold my paycheck. Do not deposit 1 penny in my bank account until this shutdown is over. I am not going to be paid by the taxpayers. as long as there is a soldier or sailor or airman and Marine who is not being paid. And what is infuriating is virtually all the Democrats are continuing to get their paycheck. They're happy to get paid even while they shut the government down in an act of petulance.
So what's it going to take for them to stop voting to keep it shut down or for the government to reopen, essentially?
At some point, you'll see a handful of Democrats agree to work with the Republicans to turn the lights back on. And the reason we have a shutdown, in order to pass funding to keep the government open, it takes 60 votes in the Senate. Under the Senate rules, you've got to have 60 votes. There are only 53 Republicans. That means Republicans cannot keep the government open on our own. We have to have Democrat cooperation. We need at least 7 Democrats. And right now, the Democrats are voting almost entirely party line. I think there are 3 Democrats who have joined with us to keep the government open, but we need at least 7. So 3 is not enough. What will happen eventually, and I don't know if it'll be next week or in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but at some point, you'll see 7, 8, 9, 10 Democrats come together. It will probably be Democrat senators who are retiring, who are no longer facing the risk of being primaried from their left. And they'll join together and say, OK, this shutdown's gone on long enough. It's time to turn the lights back on. It's time to reopen the government. Now, you asked a minute ago, what does a government shutdown mean? In a government shutdown, typically, about 17 to 18% of the federal government shuts down. About 82 to 83% continues. The basic principle is everything that is essential continues. So our military continues. We continue to defend ourselves because that is critical and vital even during government shutdown. What also continues is law enforcement. So the FBI continues, Border Patrol continues, ICE continues. Anything that is protecting the public safety, that continues. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of that continues. What shuts down? What shuts down is functions that are deemed non-essential. So things like the national parks. If you were planning to go to a national park, you are likely to find it closed. If you were planning to come to Washington, D.C. with your family and wanted to visit the Smithsonian and go to the Air and Space Museum, you're likely to find that closed. That's one of the things that shuts down. And we see an impact all across the federal government because paychecks don't go. Even though the government continues open, federal employees don't get their paychecks. So they're expected to essentially work for free. And then typically after the shutdown, they get back pay. I will tell you something President Trump announced this week is that he is going to pay the military, even though ordinarily the military would not get paid. He is shifting funds within the Department of War to ensure that our fighting men and women get their paycheck. And I got to say, it's astonishing. Democrats are furious. They're angry and saying, you know what? I want that young private or corporal, or I want that sergeant. I want their paychecks stopped. They're not saying that out loud. They're just saying they're upset that President Trump is paying our fighting men and women. I think what the Democrats are doing is wrong, and eventually they're going to say, all right, we've done this stunt enough. Let's reopen the government.
So with that being said, does that mean people, military personnel over at Dias, they're still getting paid during this time?
At least for now, what President Trump has announced is that he's moving funds around within the Department of War to continue the paycheck going. It's not clear how long that can continue. But I think it is strong leadership from the president to say we're going to have the back of our fighting men and women.